Hello, it's Graham Cofe with another Move TV, and today I get the pleasure of talking to David McMillan. David, thanks for joining me. You've lived an amazing life, and it's people like you that we always want to get on this show to talk about just some of that journey. And we're not going to be able to go through all of it today. And in fact, we're going to leave people with an opportunity to find out a bit more about your life by coming along to an elite retreat day as well, and we'll give the details of that later. But David, thanks for joining me today. Lovely picture behind you to begin with. Let's talk a little bit about that. What just give us an indication of what are all of those lovely little badges behind you, or little.
Morning, Graham. It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks to you and Mark for inviting me along. Yeah, it would take some time to discuss the whole journey. It's been quite incredible. So behind me is a picture of 1998 when I was at Stewart Grand Prix Formula One team. The passes above are some of my Formula One passes for some of the years that I went to races. So I did 13 years of races, and then I did 4 years at Red Bull on the demonstration team around the world. So I've worked at many teams over the years.
Well, we can't talk too much about it, but your career started before there, though. Before Formula One, you were doing adventurous things before that.
I had an adventurous career with the British government. I served my apprenticeship in an RAF camp after I'd been, I did okay at school, but it was a different time. I mean, I'm 60. I was 60 in January, so last century, 40 years ago, 45 years ago, was different at school. But I excelled when I went to technical college, and I became the best apprentice in Britain out of 500, 4 years running. And I get snapped up by the Foreign Office, among other people, and I worked with Royal Protection on the electronic side. So we looked after other royal houses, British embassies, military establishments, and government buildings across the world. So I had a fairly colourful career in that for quite a long time. That was pre-Formula One, pre-motorsport.
And just before we came on as well, you were talking to me about some of the kind of more personal challenges that you've undertaken in terms of climbing mountains, etc. over the year. Do you think that's important, that the kind of always pushing yourself personally as well as in business?
It's an interesting subject, because some people have said to me in the past that, "Are you really ambitious?" And I never ever saw myself as ambitious. I think I saw myself as determined.
Right.
Because the things that were on my bedroom wall as a kid have been constants in my life. Tenzing Norgay, the summit Everest. Sir Ernest Shackleton, a picture of him, the great Antarctic explorer. Ari Vatanen, World Rally Champion. Sir Jackie Stewart, 3 times Formula One champion. Neil Armstrong on the moon. I never became an astronaut. I never became a Formula One driver.
Still time.
I don't think so. I never became a Formula One driver or a World Rally champion. And when I climbed Everest in '92, which is like 30 years ago last year, again, it was different. I never got up. I got beaten summit day by 200 feet because of the weather. But do you know what? It's an even better story, because we don't always get the gold medal. But when you get silver on Everest, you go higher than most people go in their life. So I had to settle for that. And then I climbed on Choyo, 6th highest in the world, Shishapangma. A couple of times on Barunsi, a 7,000 metre mountain, Amadablam, Pumari, and lots of 6,000 metre mountains. So that was colourful, and it was that was an amazing experience. And you meet amazing people, especially the Sherpa people. They're a race like no other.
In terms of your career, a lot of it is actually giving to other people. Especially in more recent times, you've been training young athletes, if you like, to drive, to achieve. What's the motivator for you to see other people do well?
It's quite a long story. That would go back to when I was training as a coach. My mother had dementia, and everybody that will listen to this will have had an elderly family member suffer with dementia. And of course, my old boss, Jackie Stewart, is pushing really hard at the moment with a charity called Race Against Dementia. My mother actually challenged me one day many years ago, the year before she died. She never recognised me, then she did recognise me and told me she'd never seen me so unhappy and that I had all this knowledge and experience and I was wasting it. What was I going to do with it? And she said to me, never let the library burn down. And in the January, that was in the December, she went into hospital on Christmas Day and she never came out. She died the following August. And I decided to go, I live near Liverpool, near where Mark is. I decided to go to a networking event. And I walked into this bar at this networking event because I'd never worked locally. I'd been travelling the world with the Cabinet Office, Foreign Office and Formula One. And this charismatic elderly gent said, right then, young man, who are you? And tell me what you've done. And this was the one and only Mr. John Haynes that ran the International Coaching Academy. And I said to him, well, he said, right, tell me what you've done. I said, well, tell me what you do. I said, right, I'll tell you what I've done. And he went, you'd make an amazing coach. And I was like, what does that mean, John? No, you make, come and see me. So I went to see him, and when I went to his offices, it was evident something was going on and things were kind of clicking. And then at the end of the day, he said to me, you've had an amazing life. Never let the library burn down.
Oh, my word.
And it was like so uncanny. And I thought, whoa. So I went to these courses. And there's one question I always ask, not the kids. I've got quite a lot of young lads that race karts. But when I coach what I term normal human beings, I said to them, one of the questions is like, what's the meaning of life? Now, there's never a right or a wrong answer. And if you ask me that at 16, when I was 26, 36, 46, 56, it'll be different. But arguably, the greatest brain of the last century would be Albert Einstein, arguably. He was asked that very question when he was at the end of his life, and he never even hesitated. And he said, the meaning of life is about making a difference in other people's lives. And that's why I became a coach. Because my mother was right, as mothers normally are.
As they always are.
As they always are. They know you like no other.
Yeah.
And when she said that, I remember thinking, what am I going to do? And my dad said to me, you'll figure it out. And that's how I became a coach, really, when I met John, and he said the same thing.
And it's so vital as well, though, the work that you're going to be doing there, because people need that guidance. They need, they need to learn. We all need to learn from someone that's a lot of the time been through an experience and made mistakes. How much, when you're talking to people about, how to do this or how to do that, do you kind of reminisce about mistakes that happen? And is there a story that very quickly that comes off the top of your head?
Yeah. Sir Alex Ferguson, arguably the greatest football manager ever. I was listening to one of his podcasts when I was in the car. And one of the things he used to say was, do you know how you can tell a real diamond? And I never really knew. So you see, it's mostly Jewish chaps, isn't it, in Holland and places, or in London, and they're looking through their eyepiece at the diamond. And you can tell a diamond because it's flawed. That's a real diamond. And I thought that's so profound, because I immediately thought about George Best when I heard that in the podcast. And then I think about Paul Gascoigne. And then I go to racing drivers like Michael Schumacher, the greats, Ayrton Senna, the greats, but they're flawed. And everybody makes mistakes. And when you're young, you're allowed to make mistakes. Making mistakes, because when you make them when you're older, people tell you you should have known better.
And you're less likely to walk away from them as well.
Yeah. So, and I said to the kids on a Friday, we won 4 championships last year. So 3 kids in karts, and Tom Ingram, British touring car champion, is a client of mine. But I normally say to the kids, look, Friday's testing, making mistakes on a Friday. Oh, but nothing's perfect. We don't seek perfection. Perfection doesn't exist. We seek excellence. And in the constant pursuit of excellence, we find consistent excellence. And that's how a Formula One team works, because there's never a perfect day. But you're surrounded by experts. Everybody's consistently excellent at what they do. And it's an amazing environment to work in. And we touched earlier on there in the chat for the Red Arrows. And a very good friend of mine who was at Stewart Grand Prix, who worked in that car there, and several other cars, he was in the Red Arrows. He was a hydraulics technician. And he was the most amazing hydraulics technician I've ever seen. He was so consistent in his execution of everything that he did. And he was here last week. He dropped in to see me. And you get to work with the most amazing people. You know, super intelligent people, super professional. And all of a sudden you become one of them. I don't think super intelligent when you see some of the clever people in Formula One, but you become super consistent and excellent at what you do. And that's in your DNA all of a sudden. And then you can't understand why people don't do it like that. So it's quite frustrating when you leave. So I ended up back working in motor racing and passing on that knowledge to the kids of how the best drivers in the world work with. Like I worked with Barrichello, David Coulthard, Eddie Irvine, Johnny Herbert, the list goes on, Nick Heidfeld, Mark Webber, and of course 4 times F1 champion, young Mr. Vettel, Sebastian. He came to do some events with us at Red Bull when he was 18, but we knew straight away he was a super talent. And I worked with Sir Jackie Stewart, the most amazing team principal ever. So
that's the key, though, isn't it? You just said it there, right? I mean, because all those people are amazing names, but I guess, you know, the one thing that you will probably talk about more than anything is team.
Oh yeah. That's the one thing I miss. That's the one thing I miss. Graham. People say to me, "What do you miss about working in a Formula One team?" I say, "Working in a Formula One team," but I don't miss the unbelievably long hours, the relentless travel. No, I said to you that I'm 60. You know, when you're 35 and 40 and 45,
it's fun.
It's amazing. But I'm past that. You know, I saw the boys off to Melbourne on Saturday night. I was speaking to one of the boys at the airport. And they had that wonder of an overnight flight to Melbourne, not in business class, at the back of the plane. I went, I don't miss that. But I miss putting the shirt on, running the cars, being surrounded by excellence, and everybody knows what they're doing. And it's a really amazing thing to be part of. And when people come into the garage, they see this kind of dance going on around the car. Everybody dressed the same, so the public don't know who Andy is. And you know you need to be here and you need to move because he's coming. And there's just this dance of teamwork that goes on around the car. It's just, it's an amazing experience.
I like how you're using musical terms for that. I mean, my only kind of experience of, I suppose, at that level would be in music myself, because that's you know, part of my background. And there's something I do a podcast with top flight musicians, and one of the things that musicians will always talk about is this thing where they can just look at each other mid-song and go, I know where that's going.
Do you know what that is?
Yeah.
I describe it as you find a rhythm.
Yep.
And when a racing team finds a rhythm, it's great when you've got a great car. Now, if you look at Aston Martin this year, who I contract for, and I'll do some days for them this year, maybe 20. That's enough. Dip my toe in, make a guest appearance as an old bloke, and you know, do a few days. But it's enough. It's enough of a hit. But they've got an amazing car this year, and the energy will be high. The motivation will be through the ceiling. They've got Alonso in the car. He's an amazing talent. He can get it done, that lad. But you find a rhythm, and it's hard to explain, but you can feel it.
Mm.
You can feel it. Nobody needs to say it because there's hardly any talk around a Formula One car. It's the engineer to the driver.
You couldn't hear anyway, could you?
Yeah, and well, you've got your headset on, the driver to the engineer. Because everybody's on the same level and everybody's tuned in and everybody knows where they need to be and what they're doing, and everybody else is the same, you don't need to speak. There's
Do you get those little smiles, though? Do you get those little...
Yeah, you get these little smiles. There's a nod. Mm-hmm. Like, and if I've been on a car and I've taken the back wheel off, I've gone the wheel off when we're running, and there's been a problem. But I've never said in the radio to them, you know, push the button on your headset you can and say to the number of my car, there's a problem here. You might just go, where you just go, Alan, Nessie, because that's my nickname. Everybody knows me as Nessie. And I'll get to that actually. That's quite an interesting thing. And he'll look and he'll know where I am. He'll recognise the voice and I'll just go, put my hand up and I'll go. And I'll point and he'll come and have a look. You don't need to talk about it because people are listening on the radio. And the funny thing about nicknames is people pick up on it, especially ladies, far more so than men, because they're so switched on to people. Guys are too busy. The guys are too busy drilling over gearboxes, but the women are so switched on to what's going on with the people. And somebody said to me a while ago, what's with the nicknames? I said, well, when I was at Jordan, there was 3 Daves on one car: Dave McMillan, Dave Fogden, and Dave O'Neill. And if you hear a radio call like Dave, come to chassis 2, you go, is it? But if it's Neely, Nessie, or Foggy, you're straight there, and it's efficient. So nicknames are efficient, and they cut down on downtime. You go straight there because you know it's you. So there's a lot of things go on that people don't see, but more so that people don't hear. And when the team finds a rhythm, it's like your business finding a rhythm. And there's so many things. I said to everybody, look, you can never run your business like a Formula 1 team. It's impossible. But you can pick the best bets and you think, I will use that. That'll work for us. And that's when I talk about it. I talk about excellence. And it's kind of early days with that, but it's going pretty well and people are enjoying it and they're listening and they're picking up and I can see them taking notes. So there's a lot to learn for certainly for how a Formula 1 team works.
And we all want to know because we're all there trying to run a business and it's hard work running a business. It's hard work. Management, especially once you start getting into management, that's difficult stuff.
That's when you need your leader.
Absolutely.
So
and you need to be a leader that's part of a team.
Yeah, and when I talk about Sir Jackie Stewart, and see, he was my boyhood racing hero. There was a picture of him in my bedroom wall when I was a kid. So fortunately for me in my life, everything that was on my bedroom wall, I touched. And I said earlier, I never became anywhere. But, I've been to South Georgia and stood beside Ernie Shackleton's grave when I was 19. When it's a long, long, long time ago. Worked with Sir Jackie Stewart, worked with Harry Vatanen at Subaru World Rally Team. I never met Neil Armstrong, but I met a man, spent a day with a man that went to the moon, Charlie Duke, on Apollo 16. He was the astronaut speaking to Neil Armstrong when he landed on the moon. And I touched all these things, but, leaders, amazing leaders. Jackie, let's see how good Jackie Stewart was, Sir Jackie Stewart was. He went to 57 funerals of racing drivers. Back then, if you made a mistake, that was it. Jackie made a few mistakes, but not many. That's how good he was. And he survived. And he retired on the eve of his 100th Grand Prix because his teammate was killed. It's Francois Sever at Watkins Glen in America. And he talks about it publicly and says, he went to 57 funerals. I mean, that's unthinkable. You imagine going to funerals of 57 workmates and having to go back to work the next day. So
choosing to put yourself in that risk situation, but knowing, and there's the teamwork thing again. That is immense trust, isn't it?
Oh, it's huge. It's huge. I mean, I always say to people, like, we've got to remember, I mean, I'm not a mechanic, I was an electrician. And I say to people, it's so process-led. You've got to have OCD when you're a mechanic. Right? When you see the toolboxes, and everything's about OCD in a Formula 1 garage. And again, the ladies pick up on it immediately. They look at how clean and tidy everything is and how structured everything is. Blokes are too busy, like, oh, look at that gearbox. And everything's like that. Everything is a place. It's got to be in that place. Jackie always said, motorsports 80 to 90% presentation. And we were so well presented at Stewart Grand Prix. But when it comes to the business of Formula 1, Jackie was a brand ambassador for Ford Motor Company for 40 years. He's been and is a brand ambassador for Rolex watches and Moet. I think they pronounce it Moet in Chandon. I normally said Moet, but it's Moet and Chandon Champagne, both for 50 years.
That's a crazy amount of time, isn't it?
50 years he's been global brand ambassador for these two brands. And I asked him one day, I said, how did you do that, Jackie? He goes, YOE. I said, well, what's that? I said, years of experience. Right?
Fantastic.
And he, when you go and, I mean, obviously I worked there for 3 years, and I've been to events and seen Jackie, speak at events. And he's captivating. He's so good at what he does, but he can back everything up. He can back absolutely everything up. How did he become a brand ambassador for two global brands like that for 50 years? I mean, it's just amazing. And as a leader, he had been there. He had done it. He had won 3 world championships when it was really dangerous, and everybody had the highest respect for him. And he led for the front. I remember the Stewart Grand Prix handbook. And when you opened the handbook, Sir Jackie Stewart, no one at this team's too important to sweep the garage floor. So he led for the front.
Yeah.
The most amazing individual. And he has time for everybody. And when he signs his autograph, no matter who you are, could be a little boy, a little girl, an elderly lady or gent, he'll stop, he'll engage with you, and he'll sign a full autograph. And he once said to me, I do that because that's my name and it's my brand. He's a world-class act. And I learned so much working for him.
Now, you're going to be talking at the next Move Masterclass Elite Retreat Day.
Yes.
So what can people expect if they come to hear from you? More of this.
more of this, but probably in depth, more of how you achieve that excellence, how that excellence helps retain staff, how you've got to have that vision, you've got to have that leader. A bit of the story of my life, really. How I went for the west of Scotland, a little kid where the nearest set of traffic lights was 75 miles away, to climbing Everest, working in royal houses, and working in Formula One. It's been quite a journey. Sometimes I think, how do I manage to pull that off? They told me at school, isn't it, McMillan, you'll never amount to anything if you don't concentrate. So yeah, a bit more of that, a bit more in-depth stuff about how a Formula One team works, how you can pick the best bets. Actually, I'm doing a talk in Liverpool on Friday or something similar. A company I've been invited back. I gave a talk on it, so I'll be getting in depth more. So we'll be talking about things like that, the structure of a Formula One team, the processes, the procedures, the transparency, the traceability, how everybody's accountable. And more in-depth stuff like that.
But also, you'll be there in person. So if people want to ask you questions, they can.
Yeah, sure.
And that's the beauty of these things is, being able to spend that little bit of time with anybody. Like you've spent time with people like Jackie Stewart over the years, and how valuable it is to just spend time with people that have had those experiences, and you can ask them that burning question that you've had on your mind.
Yeah, I mean, I did 300 Grand Prix, a couple of hundred tests, and probably 50 events with Red Bull in 50 countries. So there's a huge amount of knowledge of the sport in my head. But when you work with people like Sir Jackie Stewart, and you see them, how they work and how they operate, how focused they are. Amazing people to learn off. I learned so much just watching Jackie and how he did things, and other people as well. Obviously Adrian Newey was at Red Bull when I was there. He's designed 13 World Championship winning cars. He's a genius, and Red Bull's an incredible team. And then you've got the extended family of Red Bull, the Red Bull Racing to Red Bull around the world. And you see the infrastructure they've got and the asset they've got globally. And, Mr. Mateschitz died this year, David McMillan. He was a visionary, that man. And you see people like him, I met him a couple of times, but you see what they create and you think, that's impressive, that.
Yeah.
And then when you work on the inside, you see the ethos and you see the rhythm that they've got globally and how they do things. They invented like extreme sports, really, and extreme sports sponsorship. And well, what he did was incredible. He was another amazing individual.
Well, David, thank you so much for coming and just giving people a little glimpse into your life today, your background in sport, your expertise, being part of a world-class team, and just what that might have been like. If people are interested and would like to find out more from David or hear from David, then, as I say, we are putting on a Move Elite Mastermind retreat day. And if you'd like to know details of that, we will put the details of that and the links in amongst the links for this as it goes out on the different social medias. But David, thank you for joining me today on Move TV. It's been an absolute pleasure meeting you, sir. And I hope to speak to you again sometime soon. But
the pleasure was all mine, Graham. Thanks very much for having me.
Thank you. If you've enjoyed this, do share it with other people on the social media platforms. Get other people interested in Move and Move TV. Until next time, bye for now.